Hello, welcome everybody. Sorry, it's taking a minute to get off of mute there. Always the issue. Welcome to our AMA tonight. We're so excited to have you, so happy for everyone who was able to make the time to show up today. So I'm Cicely. I am a nurse and I work here at Cofertility. You may see me on split calls where we go a little bit more in depth with the process. I'll allow Allison to introduce herself and kind of walk us through what we'll be going over today.
All right. Hi, guys. I'm Allison. I am a member advocate at Cofertility. I'm also a physician assistant. I've been working for about 2 years now and joined Cofertility a few months ago. My primary role is reviewing applications and doing split calls with all you wonderful members. Super excited about this webinar today and to be able to answer all your questions. So what we're going to cover today, our agenda, we're going to kind of talk a little bit about, who we are as Cofertility and our different programs, as well as kind of our why, why Cofertility came about and, why we do what we do. We're also going to talk a little bit about the process, how our split program works, and then your application, of course, a lot about eligibility and disqualifiers, and some important factors to consider when you're filling out your application that will help kind of make the process smoother for you guys and for us, for everyone. And then we're going to leave a lot of time at the end for questions. This webinar is it's to inform you guys of the split program, but also we want to be able to answer your questions. So about half this webinar today will be allotted to answering those questions. What we'll do, we'll have you drop your questions in the Q&A box for Coco to go through, and we'll get to a lot of those at the end of the webinar. If you don't feel comfortable publicly posting your questions, feel free to DM Coco personally, and she'll say those questions for you for us to get to. And then I just want to say too, Cicely and I, we are medical professionals, but this webinar today is not to offer any medical advice, any personal medical advice. It is to answer your questions, but if you have something going on, please go to your own doctor for that. So just wanted to throw that out there.
All right, so just hopping back in, who is Cofertility? So you all will know us by the split program. So that is going to be our Freeze by Co portion of the company. The split program is likely what brought you all here. So that is where, that's our program where you freeze your eggs for free, and then when you donate the other half. So you're getting a chance to freeze your eggs and then also donate to an intended parent or intended parent who is unable to otherwise conceive. There is also the Keep program. That's going to be where you freeze your eggs and you keep 100% of those eggs for yourself. So that includes some medication discounts, the same support that you would get throughout the split process, very similar in the Keep program as well. So we'd be able to help walk you through the process, get you set up for appointments and consultations and things like that. And finally, part of what makes this whole process kind of work and gel together, we have our Family by Co, which is our family building program. That's where intended parents, they match with members of the split program, and they're able to use the eggs from the donation to be able to start their own families. So that's just kind of an overview of what we do and kind of how everything goes together.
All righty. And then we'll talk kind of about, our why and why we're different than other egg freezing companies. Cofertility, it was founded on the basis we want to make egg donation and third-party reproduction a more humanized experience. Sorry, excuse me. Oh man, sorry. Oop. There we go. This computer is very touchy. But anyway, so we offer a lot of education. So if you go to our website, we have a whole entire Learn website on Cofertility dedicated to educating you guys. Lots of resources on there and articles about fertility, birth control, egg freezing, and just reproduction in general. And then we also, really try and make you guys feel part of a community. So if you are approved for the split program and sign your split agreement, we add you to our Freeze member group. And so through that, you can talk to other members and kind of connect with other people going through the same thing. We also are trying to make egg freezing more accessible for everyone. Through the split program, it's pretty much free for you to freeze your eggs. And so through that, you're making it more accessible. And then we also want to empower women and make, it more, we want to give you a chance to have more control over like your fertility journey and just your reproduction timeline. So that's kind of our why.
All right. And then just to kind of walk you guys through the split member process and kind of what to expect. So once you finish your application, you submit your application, there's the finalization of that. So going through the medical review, just making sure we have all the information we need. When you are approved for the split program, the next step is then doing your split program call. So you may see myself, Allison, Coco, a combination of us during those calls. And what we're going to do is really go over the process and really go into some of those nitty-gritty details. But in general, we'll just lay out the steps of what to expect. After the call, you're going to submit your AMH test. That's something we have as a part of the program. So that's anti-Müllerian hormone. That's going to be a test for your overall ovarian reserve. And if you have any questions about that specific test, you can drop those in the Q&A as well, and we'd be happy to answer those. So then we talk about on that same call, we're going to go through matching. So what the process of matching with intended parents is like. Once you complete that match, you're ready to move forward. Then we go through a screening process at a fertility clinic. So that's going to include some more blood work, some genetic testing, a psychological screening as well. And all of those tests are really just to get a better overall view of your reproductive health, your current health. And then the psychological screening is just something that kind of really walks you through the process of egg donation, making sure you understand the implications and that you fully are comfortable with that process. That's a very important step in the screening. There's also a legal review for an agreement that you and the intended parent sign together. Then we go through the cycles, the medications, the monitoring, what that entails. We talk about insurance and kind of how that applies to the process and you going through the process as well. We go over the retrieval process. And then finally, we go over what happens with the actual split part of the process and then the storage that ensues after. So if you didn't know, it's 10 years of free storage included with the split program so that you're able to have your eggs frozen for that 10-year time frame.
Yes. And again, all of this too, like this, there's a lot in this slide, but this, if you are approved, you'll get a split call and you'll get to go through all of this again. So, if this seems like a lot, there will be more of this to come. Alrighty, and now we're going to talk about the application. So the application, it's divided into sections. And so a big part of it is the medical history. And here we're kind of compiling your personal medical history along with your entire family medical history. And we want as much information as you guys can provide us. So even like, we definitely want grandparents, even aunts, uncles, cousins, as the more the better. And I just want to put this out there that if you do have a medical condition, it is not an automatic disqualifier. We'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide, because I'm sure some people have questions regarding that. But there's a lot that aren't. So I just, want to break that myth right now. And then as the other sections you'll see are gynecology. Here, it will ask about certain types of birth control you take. Some questions like if you're breastfeeding or if you've been pregnant. And then fertility. So here there will be a section asking if you've had your AMH tested before, had fertility testing, or done previous egg donation cycles. And then there will be a lifestyle section for you to kind of fill out if you use nicotine, any drug use, alcohol, etc., all that kind of stuff. And then another big portion of your profile is going to be your photos and your personality and motivation section. In the photo section, the more photos, the better, because we're trying to get a sense of like who you are as a person, specifically for the intended parents, because they will be looking at these profiles later. So baby pictures, childhood pictures, recent pictures, and like a variety. So if you really like to travel, like post pictures of you doing that, just so again, we can get a sense of like who you are. Show your authentic self. And then there's also like 6 to 8 questions on, again, just your personality and some motivations and your goals, short-term, long-term. The longer those answers are, the better. We ask for them to be like between 4 and 6 sentences, because it does help your chances of matching the longer they are. So The personality section, you can, if you are accepted into the program, there is a chance for you to like tweak those answers and upload more pictures. I know most people don't have like baby pictures just hanging around, so there will be an opportunity to kind of tweak that and fix that later on in the process. All right. And so pre-screener, all of you today have already done the pre-screen, so you meet the requirements for age, BMI, nicotine use, and then knowledge of your biological family medical history, because you do need to know your medical history of your mother and your father. Those are important. Then grandparents is preferred, but if you don't know everything, that is okay. And then in the application, so medical history, we follow ASRM guidelines and FDA guidelines to kind of make our decisions based on your medical history. So some commonly like asked about medical conditions, you know, if we disqualify on that, we see a lot of the time like anxiety. So anxiety, it's not an automatic disqualifier. On a lot of these conditions, we kind of look at it case by case, see what medications you take, what treatments you've received, and just, you know, how the severity of it. So the more information you can provide on, like in the application, there's specific, like you'll write, oh, I have anxiety, and there will be an opportunity for you to list your age diagnosed and then any other information. It's really great if you guys put in there, like what medications, like just again, like treatments, all of that, because it helps us make our decision. And if you leave it blank, to be honest, you'll probably get an email from me just asking for more information to kind of help us make that decision that's best in line with ASRM guidelines. Yeah, so anxiety, like that is not an automatic disqualifier. Please apply. ADHD is another big one. People think they can't be an egg donor for, but you know, another case by case thing we look at, as well as depression. Acne, that's generally fine. I mean, most people do have acne, but you know, put that in your medical history because it's still good to know. PCOS, that's a huge one. That is not a disqualifier to be an egg donor. Let's see, endometriosis, that one is very like case by case, depends on the severity, as well as thyroid conditions and other autoimmune conditions. Am I missing anything that you guys, any questions about that right now that you're seeing, Coco? No, okay. And then, so those are some medical conditions, just commonly asked about ones. And then for drug use, please be honest with that part. We don't care. We're not judging. We're not here to like get you in trouble or anything like that. We honestly just want to know, because before this cycle, we do ask that you refrain from all of that for a month. So it's just to get an idea. But again, there's like no judgment there. We don't care. Birth control, all birth control is fine besides the depot shot. If you've received this in the past 6 months, you're not eligible until you meet that 6 months, because it interferes with the hormone medications given during the cycle process. There is a section 2, like I said before, where we ask about previous, if you've had your AMH tested before or done previous egg donation cycles. If you have, I will send a follow-up email asking for those documents. So if you have them, you know, or if you can't find them, like it'd be great if you could look for them, just, you know, have them ready, because we will eventually ask for those. I know the egg donation records, those can be tricky too. And I just want to let you guys know, if you can't get a hold of those, we can help you do that. A lot of our member advocates, we work on, you know, connecting with other fertility clinics to get those. So another big portion that we look at when reviewing applications is where you're located. You know, we work with fertility clinics across the country. It's better if you live in a more like rural place, just because you'll be closer to fertility clinics. But if you are like in a very rural place, that's okay. You just have to be willing to travel to certain fertility clinics, but that travel will be covered. So yeah, alrighty, that was a lot. Cicely. Oh. I think we lost Cicely for a second. Any questions that we're getting right now? We're having some. Oh, I think she's coming back. Sorry, guys.
Yes, I'm so sorry. I apologize. My power went out in the middle of the call, so sorry about that.
Oh no.
Yes, it's Kentucky stormy weather. That's what happens to us. So I'm sorry for holding everyone up.
You know what? It
Allison,
happens. It's okay.
did you answer any of the QA questions before I go into this slide?
I did not yet, no.
Okay, perfect. I guess we could also take a time if there's any Q&A questions that Coco is seeing that have popped up that are kind of related to what we're talking about now, if you want to pull those up and we can maybe answer those.
Absolutely. Actually, Allison, you just answered a question that came in.
Did I?
You did. So the question was, if you live in a rural town, would that make it difficult to match? So you just mentioned that before, but if you want to just.
So I would say as long as you're willing to travel, it's okay and it shouldn't be an issue. And again, the travel is covered. So those expenses will not come out of your own pocket.
And then another question, just because you mentioned travel, is are they required to travel?
No, you're not required to travel depending on your location. So like if you live, say like in Los Angeles, there's tons of fertility clinics around there. So you'll be able to, go to one super easily. But again, if you are like, we're somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Like if you're somewhere like where there's nothing accessible to you, you will, just because like we have to do those monitoring appointments and like the physical and stuff. But again, if you're closer to like cities, you shouldn't have to travel as much. No.
Perfect. And then one other question is, if I have an IUD, do I have to take it out?
That is a good question. No, you do not have to take it out generally. IUDs and implants, so Nexplanons, you can usually keep those in during the cycle. The only thing the patch and then like birth control, like oral contraceptives, you'll have to go off of those during the cycle, but you will not have to take your IUD out or your Nexplanon.
Awesome. Thanks.
You're
We have
welcome.
questions coming in, but I'll save a few more for a little later.
Okay, sounds good.
Awesome. But yeah, those were great questions. And that kind of covered the first part of the slide, just talking about travel and kind of the requirements and parameters around that. We also like to talk about talking with your family and or partner about this process, about you doing this process. I always feel like it's good to, especially if you have good relationships, of course, with your family members, with friends, to really just talk through the process, kind of see if anyone else has done it. I know a lot of times when I'm in calls, I have it come up that like, yeah, I actually thought about doing the split program because a friend of mine recently froze their eggs, or I have a sister or a cousin or someone who went through the IVF process. And so I really, learned about it through them. So I think it's really great. It's important to talk to your family, friends, and partner about egg freezing and just about kind of your ideas around family building and things like that. But also we are great resources. We have our Learn page, which is an awesome resource as well for answering some of those questions related to like education surrounding egg retrieval and fertility and things like that. So we also are a great resource for you in that way. Also, there is a question on your application that talks about disclosure status. So what sort of match you would like, disclosed versus undisclosed, and kind of the relationships that you can build around that. So with disclosed, it really just means you and the intended parent would exchange direct contact information. So an email address or a phone number, something to that effect, so that you all could communicate directly. We also like to point out, while our stance at Cofertility is for having a disclosed match, that match can literally be whatever you and the intended parents would like to make it. So if you don't want to go out for brunch and hang out all the time, that's perfectly fine. One of the things could just be that you're open to, speaking a couple times a year regarding any questions they may have that come up, that you're okay with directly sharing information about your updated health history or family health history or something like that. We kind of, like Allison mentioned earlier, we are a person-centered company. So one of the things there is that we also like to consider the future donor conceived person in that relationship. So just knowing that they're going to have access to maybe getting some questions answered later on down the line. With undisclosed, again, there's still some gray area, but in a good way. But undisclosed just means that your communication would kind of be filtered through Cofertility. So again, what that can mean is maybe you won't have direct contact with intended parents, but you still have the ability and flexibility to make that relationship what you want it to be with the intended parents in a way that's comfortable for everyone. So at the end of the day, we really just want everyone to feel comfortable in the process. and with their situation. So there's no pressure to be disclosed versus undisclosed. We just support disclosure, since we know that the donor conceived person is at the center of that relationship overall. And then I know we may have gotten a question about it already, just kind of about the matching time frame. So I filled out my application, had this call, and now what? So in terms of matching time frame, there's a pretty wide time frame. It could be anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. I always like to give people the example. I have been here about 8 months, and I've seen matches literally happen all over that time frame. So within a couple of months, within a couple of weeks, up to a few months. So we really don't put a time. We don't have a guaranteed matching time frame. But we're always working in the background, working our hardest to make sure that you and the intended parents not only have a match, but a mutual match, meaning that it's the match that's appropriate and best for everyone involved. So hopefully that answers that part of that.
All righty.
It's me again. I had to get some water. Sorry, guys.
That was a lot.
Right, it is. So we made this slide to kind of go over a sample egg retrieval calendar. So I think this is very appropriate from what I've seen. I know that Coco can kind of attest to this as well. Coco has donated eggs in the past. So really this chart just gives you an idea of kind of what to expect during that 10 to 14 day time frame of your retrieval cycle. So I love how it breaks it down, where it gives you, STEM just stands for stimulation, but STEM days 1 through possibly STEM days 14. It lets you know what sort of medication you'd be taking, what that medication does. It lets you know kind of what's your calendar for that day. Are you going in for an ultrasound and blood work appointment? It really just kind of gives you a good idea about what to expect. Again, we like to reiterate, this is a sample. So just keeping in mind that some people may follow this calendar to a T, and other people may have some deviation. Completely normal. But again, it's just something we like to put out there, because I know that there are so many questions. I know Allison can attest to this, Coco as well. There's so many questions during our split calls, and kind of overall about like what's the time commitment? What can I expect in that 2-week time frame? And I feel like this gives you a really good idea of what to expect. And kind of circling back to what Allison said earlier about the resources that we have available in our community. So as soon as your split application is completed and accepted, you'd be able, and then you're ready to sign up for the program, move forward, you would have access to a community of people who are in the same phase of the egg retrieval, egg donation process as you, people who've completed it. So people who that you may not know, but might come to be acquainted with, that have gone through this process, that can kind of answer some of your questions. They may be in your area, but just people at varying stages in the split program process that you can talk to and talk through, and just really kind of have that sense of community as you're going through the process yourself.